Hello, this is the voice of Stuart Pearce, and welcome to Deep Dialogues, a series of vital conversations that I have with global soul stewards from all over the world who provide us with an understanding of how we can create a new hierarchy of values that is absolutely significant at this unique time of becoming. I hope you enjoy, and thanks for listening. Hello, 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 hello. Here's the wonderful Finbarr Ross and all you gorgeous people. Greetings, beacons of light. As you know, I am Stuart Pearce, and we have lots of people booking in, so this is wonderful. I'm seeing their names, Finbarr, so that you know that I through in the chat box, so you know that I'm not. That. Oh, wow. We have people from all over the world. Hello, Corinne from Vancouver Island. Robin, hello. Stacy, Robin, Stacy, Sarah, Isabel, welcome, welcome. I know we're going to have a lot of people tuning in because Finbarr is an extraordinary gentleman who's been through a very amazing process over the last 30 years, which we're going to talk about. He's so wonderfully provided his heartfelt energies, and of course, those of the Divine Mary, which we're going to talk about in a moment. So, ladies and gentlemen, let me just... Hello, Julie. Hello, Star Signs, Agnieszka. I'm going to introduce you to Finbarr formally. This is his bio. Finbarr, wonderful name. Finbarr is a Celtic mystic and the author of Sacred Mystical Journey, a life journey from tragedy to triumph. Finbarr is a modern-day spiritual alchemist whose conscious-raising work continues to inspire many worldwide. Indeed, Finbarr's wisdom, love, courage, and spiritual insight transforms and awakens the truth that we can all triumph, as he facilitates self-realization through the phenomena of awakened consciousness, the Ascension process, the divine feminine, the second coming, the unified field of consciousness, and, of course, being a Celt, the Grail legends. He leads anchoring meditations with the golden flame of illumination as the threefold flame that connects us to our soul's destiny. He leads also, in conclusion, sacred journeys around the planet. We've just been talking about Finbarr's journey to Egypt in March. And these sacred journeys are aligned with the Ascension self-realization talks and meditations that he gives globally through emotional healing and general empowerment, extolling the virtue of forgiveness within ourselves as we embrace the shadow complexes of our being. Finbarr, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you, Stuart. Thank you for having me.
To meet Finbarr for many, many, many years, knowing full well the sacred isle from which he arises originally, although you have been living in the United States for many years. Is that correct?
Yes, since 1983.
Wow, this is some time. What drew you to the States initially?
Initially, I came on business, and I just fell in love with the weather, and then I got divorced, and then I thought, okay, it's time for a new plan. And so I moved to the States. I moved to Houston, started off in Houston.
Right. And you had a very successful business there, didn't you?
I had a very successful business there, and then the property crash came in 1985, and that put the kibosh on a few things, you know.
Yeah.
A lot of people, my partner in business went bankrupt, and then of course everything's like a house of cards, then everything falls.
And so within that point of crisis, what happened?
Within that point of crisis, before that, I was involved with international investments in Dublin, which was a Gibraltar-based company. And about a year after I left, that company ran into a little cash flow problem. And then that all somersaulted into a whole new thing. And then people came in as administrators, and they did things that created more problems instead of solving the problem. They didn't talk to anybody. They just went ahead and did things. And they came into the States where I was in partnership with international investments on some of the projects. And they went in and talked to the banks. The banks, of course, then immediately pulled everything. I didn't even know they were in town. They
Wow.
didn't even tell me they were coming.
Wow.
And but at that stage, I'd already left because
Mm.
6 months before that, I'd signed over all my shares and everything,
Mm.
and so I didn't know they were coming, and they just decided that I was still the owner,
Mm. Mm.
and it just like it was chaos from there on, and
Yeah.
every agreement I made with them, then they broke it, and didn't honor it,
Right.
and then eventually the company collapsed totally,
Mm-hmm.
and then in 1991, Frank Murray, who was my partner in Dublin, was arrested, and but they never charged him with anything because the liquidator would not give evidence against him because he had worked for the liquidator.
Right.
And then in 1998, the peace accord was going on with Northern Ireland,
Mm.
and the next thing there was a politician called Roy Beggs, and Roy Beggs would not sign on to the agreement unless somebody from the south of Ireland was arrested for to do with international investments. And I was the person.
You were the
One day,
person.
the FBI arrived, and I was arrested on foot of a warrant from the Home Office. And the
Wow.
FBI guy says to me, Mr. Ross, who in the name of God have you upset? Because the only way this can be happening is through politics.
Mm.
He said,
Mm.
all statutes and limitations, everything
Mm.
gone.
Mm.
So who have you upset? You better find out who you have upset. This is what he said to me in the car as he took me to um, the Muskogee Detention Center where I spent 14 and a half months.
Wow.
And so
And then what happened?
then for the 14 months, I was backwards and forwards about whether I was going to be extradited or not.
Mm.
And the judicial system was so crooked. The
Mm.
first judge I had didn't even know where Northern Ireland was and what the difference between Northern Ireland and Southern Ireland was. The next judge comes, and uh, you had the State Department or the Department of Justice saying that I was a fugitive from justice. I couldn't have been a fugitive from justice because I'd become an American citizen. I had a clean bill of health from the FBI. Everything was there, but they were still saying I was a fugitive from justice.
Mm.
And so that, and that the Queen could not be told in her powers. So I was definitely a fugitive from justice. And so then I got arrested, and I spent, as I say, 14 and a half months. And then I was supposed to get bail.
Mm.
And everything had been agreed for bail. And I had an attorney in Washington, D.C., who was dealing with all the international parts. And then there was the local attorney. And the guy in Washington, D.C., Tom Patton, said, oh, the local guy will deal with the bail. I don't need to come down for that.
Mm.
And so this attorney Green goes in, talks to the judge with the prosecutor Wilson, and they decide on the amount of money, $250,000 for bail.
Mm.
And Green comes back out and tells me it's $250,000 for bail and you're on house arrest.
Mm.
And he said, can you raise that? And I said, my friends will say they will put it up. So after about 5 minutes, I look over at the prosecutor's chair and I said, where is Wilson? He said, oh, he's in with the judge. So I said, we're not getting bail today. He said, of course you are. It's all agreed. I said, no, it's not agreed. He said, yes, it is. So I said, okay, we'll wait and see what happens.
Mm-hmm.
And out comes the judge. All the people go up that are supposed to talk to the judge and, give them character references and everything else and how they're going to take care of various things for me. And so the next thing, the judge says, okay, I will retire and think about this.
Mm-hmm.
5 minutes later, he comes back out and he says, bail denied. And Green looks at me and said, how did you know? I said, there has been a political fix on this whole thing since it started.
Mm.
And I said, no, it's still. He obviously was told by Wilson to call somebody,
Yeah.
and they called
Yeah.
somebody,
Yeah.
and he was told to deny me bail.
So the story, Finbarr, is extraordinarily complex with all its innuendo and subtlety. But of course, what we've gathered from your story is that this was a trumped-up charge, and it was purely a political precedent that actually moved you forward into this gross experience. What
Oh,
I'd like to do is to leap forward through the story, if we may, because our time is limited, because I know that there is what thus far is a very tragic story, that actually there was a point of elevation that happened to you in state penitentiary when our Mary came and spoke to you. And I'd love to edge you towards that, because I know that we have a lot of extraordinary, exquisite energy from Mary through you to share with the wonderful people that are tuning in. Is that possible? Can we go there?
oh yes, sure.
So
You
if
know,
you think of just finalizing that story, because the details are quite heavy and dark. Fortunately, you're no longer there. You've moved on with this, with the the latter part of the story, which I just love.
yeah,
So you were eventually condemned for a term of imprisonment. Is that correct?
I was got 30 months, and then there was an appeal because the judge abused my rights so much, and then um, I had to, and so we had to go to appeal,
Yeah.
and um, I had an understanding. I was so angry. And
Mm.
then one day I had a talk with myself about 5 days after and I said, Finbarr, you're going nowhere until you
Mm.
forgive the judge.
Mm. Mm.
And so I spent about 5 days, 6 days, forgiving the judge. And then finally I was able to take him in my arms, give him a big hug, and tell him, thank you for being an actor on the stage, for taking me through this process and everything else. And then I felt so good when I had done that. And
Mm.
then I said, and Mother Mary, and now today I need a miracle. And at 3:30 that afternoon, I got my miracle.
And the miracle was.
The miracle was a prison guard came, opened my cell door, handed me a bag, and said, pack your stuff, you're going to Belfast in the morning.
Wow.
And so
And going to Belfast to.
to the I didn't know. So I said, can I speak to my attorney? So he let me speak to my attorney. And I called him and I said, Joe, what's happening? And he said, we don't know. All we got was a message to have you at the appeals court in the morning at 10 o'clock. That's all we know. We got a
In Belfast.
message. Yeah. We got
Yeah.
a message from the Lord's Chief Justice's office
Right.
telling us to do this.
Right.
So we get there the following morning, and it's a special sitting of the appeals court.
Mm-hmm.
There is nobody in the court but the attorneys
Mm-hmm.
and me
Mm-hmm.
and the police. And we weren't quite sure why we were there because we had filed so many different things. And
Sure.
we had the Lord Chief Justice and the Deputy Lord Chief Justice sitting on the bench.
Mm-hmm.
And the Lord Chief Justice said to my barrister, Mr. Harvey, Mr. Harvey, you're here we have granted you an appeal, and I take it you're here for bail. And Mr. Harvey said, yes. And he starts to speak about why I should get bail. And Lord Chief Justice put up his hand and said, it's okay, Mr. Harvey. What were the terms and conditions of Mr. Ross's bail the last time? He said, so Mr. Harvey tells him, he said, okay, same terms and conditions. We're out of here. And he said, we will get copies of the transcripts and everything to you within the next short period of time.
Mm-hmm.
That short period of time turned out to be 10 months.
And where you were placed, you were in prison for 10 months, or you were on bail?
No, I was on bail.
You were on bail. So you were free. You were a free man.
I was a free man. I was down in Dublin, but I had to go to Belfast once a month to the court.
Yeah.
And I had to go sign on with the police once in Northern Ireland. I had to go up to Newry to sign on once a month there as well.
So, as I was saying earlier, the innuendo of the story is very complex for our listeners to
Yeah.
embrace. But if I may, I'd love to urge you forward to the finality of the process. Could you sum up what happened with the legal dispute?
With the legal dispute, there was finally um, an appeal, and then the Lord Chief Justice, the day that the appeal ended, he said to me, "It will take 6 weeks." And
Hmm.
I want you, and he said, then you will be back. Normally we put you to jail, but I don't see any sense in sending you back to prison. So he said, I want you to understand one thing. You have stretched this court. Do you understand, Mr. Ross, that you have stretched this court? And this was a very mystical moment
Hmm.
because it was like the Lord Chief Justice's eyes and mine were one. We were
Hmm.
in this, and he said this to me 3 times. And then he wished me well, and he went, he left.
So, what do you feel he meant by "you have stretched this court"? And then you speak of a moment of conciliation between the two of you. What does that mean exactly?
I believe that, the Northern Ireland court system was so corrupt that this was a time, I think, where the EU had intervened at some level on the courts, that they had to, around appeals and about various different things that were unconstitutional happening in Northern Ireland. And I believe I was the first appeal to come under that new
Right,
regime.
right.
And of course, when you have 19 violations against the judge of human rights, that is big. And they only took one of
Right,
it. So,
right, right, right.
and then we finally had the where he gave down his decision, and he apologized to me when he came in and said, "I'm sorry, I'm 2 weeks late, but I had the flu." And he said, then he gave his decision that the whole thing was based on innuendo,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
everything had to be thrown out.
Everything had to be thrown out. So this
Yep,
meant that you were a completely free man. Is that what you're saying?
completely free man. Everything had to be wiped clean.
Right.
Yeah,
And so is that the end of the legal story?
that's the end of the
Yeah.
legal story.
Beautiful. Thank you so much. So when you reflect back onto the entire, um, so, that expression, Casey's court,
Yeah.
it's like this extraordinary complexity and innuendo and subtlety and backstabbing and well, heaven knows what the FBI, the State Department of Security and the British government were doing. I mean, it just goes on and on and on and on.
Oh, yeah.
You were riding through this, it seems, with a great deal of grace and ease, which is extraordinary for those of us who are listening to the complexity of the story that you're telling, where you weren't a free man till this point. What carried you through? What gave you the moral fiber and strength that carried you through? Was it Mary?
Yes, Mary. Every night in when I was in Muskogee, we were in a little cell pod of 22 people, and 2 people in each cell, and we had a day room. And then at night, after dinner, people would come up to my cell, and we would sit there, and we would do the Aquarian Rosary. We would have Universal Communion. We would have from Unity. We had the Unity Church uh, Word of the Day, and we would have discussions about all sorts of things. I learned all sorts of things about abused men.
Yeah, yeah, I'm
I
sure.
I
How did
learned.
how did you present the information? I mean, apart from the fact that we can all of us seeing you in this moment, can recognize the extraordinary purity that you have, and there's this wonderful, unabiding innocence that pours through you. Your gentleness is really very touching. So, but how did your fellow inmates, how did they present themselves to you? Did you just say, "Okay, guys, I'm going to hold a rosary meditation upstairs," and they all came running, or what
No,
happened?
what happened was it was Easter Sunday,
Right.
and somebody said to me, "We need to have a service of some kind. You're a minister. Why don't you do it?"
What did they mean you're a minister?
Well, I'm an ordained minister in the Church of Community Church.
Right. So by that time, you did this happen in the middle in the middle of the legal dispute, or at the beginning, or at
No,
the end?
I was ordained the November prior to being arrested.
Right, right,
Yeah,
right. So
and
so they knew that you were a minister, and they were
yeah,
desperate for a touch of the face of God,
yeah,
and so they came to you. Right,
yeah. So we did an Easter Sunday ceremony,
right.
and in the day room, and about 75% of the guys showed up, and we used Kool-Aid as wine, and we used potato chips as
As
the
Blessed
communion.
Sacrament,
And
yeah.
so we did a whole ceremony. We had a talk around forgiveness. I gave a talk around forgiveness and everything else. And about that Easter is about resurrection. There is nothing about crucifixion. Everything is about resurrecting ourselves.
Yes.
And so um, we did that, and then people would started coming to me. And they said, you know, can you pray with me? Can you do this with me? Can you do that? And so gradually people started coming, and I said, I can do this. So then I had to get people on the outside to send me in rosary books. And we had things like, we had the dance of anger, we had how to heal your life, we had codependency no more. All of these different books we got sent in. And I would have about 11 people every night in my cell.
Wow.
And we would have these go through all these great discussions. And it went every night for over 10 months from 7 o'clock in the evening until about 11:30, because we got locked down at 12 o'clock, and everybody would go out to get their cup of coffee or whatever they wanted before they went to bed.
Wow. This
And
is
so,
extremely noble of you to do
yeah.
this. And so
So,
your fellow inmates were felons,
yeah.
who were in prison, guilty for what sort of quality of crime?
A lot of them in there for drugs, drug
Mm.
trafficking, and everything. Then there was more of them in there for interstate crime of stealing tractors in one state and selling them in another state. And
Yes.
you had guys in there for currency. They were all federal prisoners
Yes.
because everything was in there was an interstate crime. There were not just one state.
Yes. So what the law would refer to as being petty crime, mostly theft, related crimes,
Yeah,
and,
big drug crime, like drug dealers, big drug dealers.
big drug dealers. Were they violent people?
No, they were very gentle people, believe it or not. There was one or two of them that were violent, and you'd have the odd fight. And we stopped the fights after about, I'd say, 2 months. We had no more fights. We went for over 10 months with no fight. I got them to clean up the place. I talked to them. I said, how can you guys live in this kind of filth? They would have, you know, the little sachets of coffee and everything that poured in, put hot water in it, and throw it on the floor. I'd say, how can you guys live like this? This is your home, you know. So I started cleaning it up, and suddenly had 3 or 4 more people. And then we cleaned the whole place up. And as we cleaned the whole place up, there was no more fights, and more people started to come up to my cell at night and talk. And I would do readings for people. I would do, you know, like one guy, I told him, you're going to get convicted, because this guy absolutely thought that he was not going to be. And I told him he was. And I said, it's either your wife or your partner is going to sink you. And it was his wife.
Wow. How did he receive that? My God, that's a
No,
painful
it
to
was
see.
not good. What they had done, why the wife gave, and all she did was give him. He had a sheet of paper with all sorts of scribbling on it, and that's what they used. They threatened the police, the FBI, or not the FBI, but the police and the state
Yeah.
people. They over there, they're not gentle people,
No,
and
indeed.
they threatened to arrest his kids for being accessories because they went to 7-Eleven to buy postal orders.
Mm, mm,
And
mm,
so they would, and so she said, okay, and gave it. But I told him that. He was so shocked when
mm.
he came back a couple of hours later and said, I'm convicted. He got 27 years.
Mm. Wow, wow.
Yeah.
So thus far, from a sacred mystical point of view, we're hearing this extraordinary story of you being taken into the rawness of what life can be about in a very in the shadow complex, in the darker
Yeah.
forms. But you're also an instrument of, thus far we've heard about the extraordinary moment of forgiveness. Did you literally hug the judge?
No, I just put,
Metaphorically.
because metaphorically, because he
And
was in Belfast and I was in jail.
yeah, oh, I see. Right, right.
Yeah.
Okay. And that wasn't quite clear in your story, you see.
Yeah.
So forgiveness was given. Where did that come from? Did the art of forgiveness, the gift of forgiveness, did that come from your prior training as a minister?
It had come from my prior training as a minister, because without forgiveness, you're going nowhere. And, you can ask a person for forgiveness, and if they refuse it, that's okay, because they're the one then that has the problem. You're okay because you're not carried. They're carrying the revenge or whatever it is they want to carry within themselves. They're only hurting themselves. They're not hurting. And forgiveness is the key to everything. Forgiveness and gratitude, as far as I'm concerned. And I was so grateful for all my friends on the outside that
Yes.
were helping me each and every day.
Yes, yes. So the art of forgiveness actually brought about a miracle.
Yes,
That was the, and of course, and I'm sure you're very aware of this. Today we have this splendid piece of spiritual technology in relation to forgiveness, known as the Ho'oponopono.
yes,
Sorry, please forgive me. I love you. Thank you.
yeah,
But of course, as you and I know, you're giving us an expression, an illustration of the way that you embodied the whole nature of forgiveness in your heart, that you did not hold revenge. In other words, it seems that from forgiveness, there was a higher dimension flowing through you,
yeah,
that of mercy
yes.
flowing through you.
Mm.
And
Because,
the
yeah,
grace divine absolving
yeah.
whatever the conflict or crime or the judgment was that was obviously misplaced in your conduct.
Mm. And it's everything is about yourself, and it's about, if you can't forgive yourself, if you can't love yourself, if you can't do it, everything is about the self. So when you forgive another person, you're really forgiving yourself in everything that's happening as well.
So in this moment, are you referring to what is without is also within?
That's
And
correct.
so if you're in accusation of someone on the outside, you're really accusing yourself.
Yes, because
Yeah,
they're a mirror for you
yeah,
in a
yeah.
way. Yeah.
Hear that, everybody? This is extraordinary, isn't it? Do you see what Finbar is saying? Everybody on the outside is a mirror of you.
Yes.
That that as you look outside of yourself, it's a field of consciousness. It's not actually happening to you; it's responding to you.
Yes.
Whatever you project into the outside space, whatever you communicate, whatever you emanate, whatever you radiate, you will automatically receive. Suzanne, I'm glad you agree, darling. This is cosmic law. So I think we just need to accept it with grace and with humility. This is extraordinary. Now, the other issue that you brought up, which you have aplenty, is the action of grace. Because there you were saying to those guys, those tough guys, who were abusing their physical environment, hey, you guys, this is like a pigsty. Why don't you clear this up? And you started the initiative of clearing up
Yes.
by doing it yourself. You were on your hands and knees picking up their coffee sachets and all the other pieces of detritus
Yeah.
that was on the floor. And they followed your example.
Yeah. I got Polly, who was the person in charge of the mops and everything. I got her to give me a mop bucket and a mop and a brush. It took me 5 days, 5 or 6 days to persuade her to give it to me, because normally they don't give out stuff like that, because she might think that I was going to beat somebody up with it. And so I persuaded her to give it to me, that that's what I wanted to do.
Right. And the guards that were looking after you realized who you were by that time, presumably.
Yeah.
I mean, you don't have a violent bone in your body, do you?
No, they would just, they didn't know what to do with me, even in Northern Ireland, in the prison and everything. When I took on a governor, and
Yes.
they have
Yes.
they have no idea what, because they would just look at me and say, "You're a strange man," and that's all they would say to me. It's like when I was being checked into Northern Ireland, and he said, "What religion are you?" I said, "I'm a child of God. I'm an interfaith being," and he said, "What is that?" I said, "A child of God," and he said, "Okay, how about other?" I said, "That would fit me perfectly." And so, because over your cell door you had your number, you had your name, and your religion.
Yes, 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 yes,
In
yes.
Northern Ireland, it was very much because you had all sorts of religions in Northern Ireland mixed in there, and so
Amazing,
it
amazing.
was, and
So you were actually a peaceful warrior, meaning you were bringing about vast change, but purely through the love and the grace of your heart,
yes,
and the extraordinary nature of your being as a Celt.
yes.
You know, and of course, I have, may I say, I have Irish blood. My grandfather was an Irishman, so I spent a lot of time in Ireland. And you are extraordinary. You have such connection with the whimsy of life. It's absolutely wonderful.
But you
Um,
cannot show fear. There is no fear. Fear is an illusion because
Indeed,
if you
it
have
is.
the grace within yourself, there is no
Yeah.
fear.
So, in other words, through the process, which was obviously quite a terrifying process, that constantly you were reminding yourself fear is an illusion. All there
Yes,
is love. Fear is an illusion. All there is love. Because my next question to you was, this was a hardship. This was not just simply a physical hardship, because there you were in prison with rough guys, and I'm sure that there were lots of rough behaviors as a result. But you carried yourself through with such consistency that it's an illumination for all of us, because in this world of multi-stimuli, we become inconsistent and, as a result, non-concise in
mm,
our behaviors.
mm.
But you just saw it through. One of my great statements is the main thing is to keep the main thing the main thing. So you just kept going with this fearless, loving attitude. I wonder where Saturn is in your chart, because you're being pitched against Saturnine energy.
I
Do you,
have no idea.
because Saturnine energy is Big Daddy, it's the
Yeah,
patriarch. What's interesting is that your role is that of the archetypal indigo, because you're sent into the patriarchal complexity of of the criminal courts to upset it, but to upset it through grace and to upset it through forgiveness and love.
wow. Indigo is my favorite color.
Aha, aha.
I had not known that, and
Yeah,
I use my fingers for colors. I have my little finger blue, green, gold is my middle. Blue, blue, green, gold, violet, and indigo is my thumb.
right, right,
Yeah.
right. And of course, the thumb, the thumb has the Mount of Venus
Mm.
attached to it with the great
And
loving impulse.
and people that are very clairvoyant tell me that my fingers stream colors. I
Yeah,
don't see them myself.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I think your fingers, the rest of your body, stream colors as well. It's very difficult to see aura through Zoom or through
Yeah.
this particular communication process that we're using, StreamYard.
Mm.
But you have an extraordinary aura around you. The delicacy that you have, I referred to it earlier as an innocence and a delicacy, this purity that you have. It's something that you've always had, yes, through your life.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. I've had all of this since I was as long as I can remember. But I remember being the first time I was really aware of it, I was an altar boy when I
Mm,
was having experiences at the Easter ceremonies.
mm, mm.
And so, but I couldn't talk to anybody about it because I would no longer be an altar boy if I told people the things that were happening to me.
What were you seeing? What were you feeling?
Well, it was the energies that were flowing through me and everything else. And so I couldn't talk to anybody about it because, way back in those days, it would be the work of the devil and,
Yes,
that was the devil going through you. And so you learned how to keep all of these things
yes,
to yourself and not
yes,
say anything.
yes. Well, there's the way of the world, isn't it? I,
Yes.
I often refer to it. Similarly, I was also aware of the multidimensional universe. This is what
Yeah.
we were talking about. And similarly, I sought not Protestantism, which is what I was brought up in, but as soon as I discovered Anglo-Catholicism, I was there
Yeah.
because of the beauty, because of the extraordinary ritual. But for me, it was a way of becoming closer with God. So as a result of that, of course, my mysticism became even more amplified.
Yeah.
So I would see the angels and I would see the holy ones coming and speaking. I would see Mary come in all the
Yeah.
time, and sometimes even Yeshua walk through.
Yes.
But I mean, as a very small child, I spoke about it. Then I said in my innocence, and then I soon realized that I needed to shut up.
Shut
And
up.
Archangel Michael was always saying, "No, shh, shh, shh. They
Yeah.
don't understand."
They don't understand that they didn't understand the power of ritual. I
Yeah,
didn't understand the power of ritual at that time. With the
yes,
high mass and all of that, that was amazing ritual.
well,
And of
extraordinary.
course, the church lost it all. Then the church is pretty much goodbye now.
Yes. Well, except for a few very remarkable priests, one of whom
Yes.
I'm counseling at the moment.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. So the purity and the innocence and this very ancient soul that you have, which has remembered all of these wonderful divine qualities. I'd love to leap forward because I know our time is moving on, and I also want to. I want to ask everybody who's listening in if they have any questions for you, because our time is marching on as always. Um, and so we leap forward to today, and here you are in Colorado, in Montrose, as a result of your extraordinary relationship with Mary. Perhaps you could give us a perspective of what you're now doing with the sacred mystical journeys and so forth.
Well, right now, what I'm doing is every Wednesday night I do a Zoom talk and a meditation with the threefold golden flame of illumination. And I do full moons, like tonight, I'm doing a full moon, and I do equinoxes and everything. And then with the sacred journeys, I was in Scotland in September, and then I went on to Egypt, and now I'm going to Egypt again in March with a group, and then I go to Greece in May, followed by a Mary Magdalene Knights Templar Qatar trip in France.
Oh, how wonderful!
It is the most amazing trip. I have three trips. I'll be in France three times this year. I have my own tour in May, and then in September, I have two back-to-back trips for Dr. Sue Morter. You know who Dr. Sue is?
No, I don't. Oh, Sue Morter. I
Yes,
do. I do. I don't know her personally, but I know of her.
yeah.
Yes.
Sue's a very good friend of mine,
Yeah. Oh, give her
and
my love.
she, I'm doing two trips for her to
Yes.
France, and
Yes.
then I'm doing Malta and Sicily in October, and I'm doing Ireland in July.
Oh my goodness, you're such a gadabout. This is a fantastic. I
Oh well,
love.
this year is more because three of these tours are being. This is the third year of trying to do them because last year they were supposed to happen. France, Greece, and Malta and Sicily were supposed to happen last year, and
Yeah.
they were supposed to happen the year before.
Yeah.
So this is the third year of.
Yeah. Yeah. So in other words, what you're saying is that although they were planned, unfortunately, as a result of the COVID restrictions, it didn't really take
It
place.
didn't take place. So they got,
Well,
because I've reduced myself to doing three, four tours a year now for myself. I
yeah.
used to do 9, 10.
Yeah.
I have other things that I'm involved in my Zoom talks and
Yes.
my
Yes.
book and everything else. And,
Yes.
you know, it's
Yes.
getting more difficult to travel.
Yeah. Yeah. We hope that that's going to be released.
It is,
Um,
yeah. Well, I did, when I went to Scotland and Ireland and all that in September, it was easy. When I went to Egypt, it was easy. I don't like what you see on the news and what happens in reality are very different.
yes. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. I think we're all very aware of what's going on.
Yes. Yeah.
Um,
Well, the cards are crumbling.
and so one or two people are asking questions of you, if I may. Audrey, I don't know where Audrey is, but Audrey is saying, where in Ireland will you be for your sacred tour?
I'll be starting in Dublin and all of that area, the Boyne Valley, and going down to the south, all the way down Cork, Kerry, Killarney, all of that.
And you're going to primary sacred sites, are you?
All sacred sites. I don't do anything but sacred sites.
Yeah, yeah. I wonder if you could just to excite our imagination, if you could mention a few of them.
Well, we go to Tara, Newgrange, Knowit, go to St. Bridget's in Kildare, go to Glendalough. Glendalough is, without a shadow of a doubt, the only monastery in the world, to my knowledge, that was built for perfect balance, for unified consciousness. And every doorway, every archway, everything about Glendalough is perfect balance.
Mm, mm,
And
mm,
Saint Kevin was a very amazing man to come up with everything, and all the doorways, arches, everything,
mm,
windows,
mm,
they all have a balance,
mm, mm,
and
mm.
it's amazing. I love
Gosh,
Glendalough.
I'd love to come with you at some point,
Oh
and
yes, I'll be
because my particular specialism, as you know, is sacred chant, and I
yeah,
would love to chant in. I chanted in Thornay Abbey, which has this close in the south of France, has a close connection with Glendalough.
yeah.
Anyway, so wonderful. So what we will make sure, Audrey, is that. Oh, you're in Dublin, darling. Oh, hello. Wonderful to have somebody here from Dublin. We'll make sure that you have Finbarr's details at the end so that you can actually contact him and join him in his sacred tour of Ireland. And of course, with the tour through Mary's territory, I'm sure you go to Rennes-le-Château and all your
Oh yes, yeah.
temples. You
Rennes
start
Chateau.
at Chartres and then work down on the Rose Line.
Now I start in Nice
Oh,
and
do you?
go from Nice to Saint Baume to the grotto where Mary Magdalene, because Mary Magdalene is the soul of the consciousness.
Yes,
And
yes,
so Jesus brought in the seed, the Christ of the Christ consciousness, but 'twas Mary Magdalene birthed it on earth. And
yes,
this is my understanding of the whole process. And then we
yes,
have a couple of days with Mary Magdalene of solely just the energy of Mary Magdalene. And
yes.
if you have anything you don't want to deal with, she will definitely bring it up for you. She is absolutely amazing.
Yeah, yeah,
And so then we move on to Arles and down to St. Mary's de la Mar, where she came
yeah,
ashore,
yeah.
and then we go to Carcassonne, and
Right,
then all the
right.
ways up to Rennes-le-Château, down to Lourdes, up to Rocamadour, and then up to Paris and or to Chartres, and then to Paris.
So you work north, south, north rather than
Yeah,
north, south, right?
yeah. I follow the flow of energy.
Yeah,
If you
yeah,
do it the other way, it has a totally different energy.
absolutely,
And we
absolutely.
finish up on the last day in Saint Sulpice, where Mary Magdalene. It's the only place that I know where you can see Mary Magdalene with her four children.
Right, right. Oh, please tell us more about that.
Well, Mary Magdalene told me many, many years ago that she had four children, and everybody else told me no, she only had three children. And one day I'm in Saint Sulpice and I'm looking at this pulpit, and there's Mary Magdalene sitting on the top of it, and there she is with four children. And I'm going, oh my God, there. And I'd been going to Saint Sulpice for a couple of years before I recognized, sometimes twice a year before I even saw this.
Yes.
And every time I go to France, whether it's in Arles or where I will walk into an ancient church and I will find something new. It's like, there's another layer being revealed. And we're
Yes.
peeling away more energy every time I see something new. And I've been going there now since 2004. And every year I get something new.
Isn't this interesting? And it's
Yeah,
almost as though we're not there, but actually
yeah,
it's being revealed in a different way. The ethers are parting, the veils are
yes.
parting. And
Same
of
in
course,
Iona. Iona is another
yeah,
major place for revealing things.
yeah, yeah. And of course, we know that historically, all of the mysteries were known as being sub rosa,
Yeah,
beneath the rose, and were
beneath.
protected by the esoteric sects
Yeah,
like the Templars and something. But
yeah,
of course, now the rose is actually being revealed in the
yeah.
world during
In the
this
world.
age of
Yes.
transparency,
Yeah,
so that it's easier for us to really live the
yeah,
sanctity of the unconditional love of Mary, and also the forgiveness that the Magdalene teaches us.
yeah.
Are you familiar with Lars Mull?
I am. Yes, I have
Yeah,
his book actually. Yeah,
yeah, yeah,
and the other place in the world that I find extraordinary is Italy, especially in Assisi and
yes,
but all over Italy.
yes,
There's
yes.
amazing experiences, but Assisi is like the energies and things that happen to me in Assisi are amazing. The profound experiences that happen in Assisi are.
I hear you, Finbar. I haven't been for many years, but I'm just sorry. I'm just checking the chat box, see if there are any more questions for you. Do you believe we are? Do you believe we are love? We come from love, and all there is love. Oh, I grew up near Tara, now live in Scotland. Thank you for this wonderful dialogue, because that's beautiful. Thank you, Suzanne. Yes, I think Finbarr and I have a very strong conviction that love is all there is.
Yes.
Right
And
to the very core of it, love is all there is. Anything else is an abstraction.
yeah, and seeing that she comes from near Tara, she should realize that Tara is the heart chakra of the threefold golden flame.
You're
And the
right.
Great Pyramid at Giza is the
Yeah.
wisdom, and
Yes.
Lake Titicaca is the illumination. So you have love, wisdom, and illumination,
The
and
three.
all three locations are on the same ley line.
Yes. Did you hear that, Suzanne? Yeah, and this is fantastic. Um, Finbarr, the information like this that you've just revealed, do you have a book, or is it on your website, or
It's on my book, Sacred Mystical Journey.
it's in your book, right?
Yes, and
So
then
we'll make sure that you have details about this afterwards, ladies and gentlemen. Yes.
and it's my website is sacredmysticaljourneys.com. My
Right.
book website is sacredmysticaljourney.com.
So you
My
see, there's again repetition, everybody. Luigi is asking, does Kundalini predate that? I'm sorry, I don't understand the question. Was it called something else, such as Kundalini energy that can exist in human spine after meditation to chanting? I'm sorry, I don't quite know what that relates to, Luigi. Perhaps you can specify further down. How can we entreat or indeed invite the Blessed Mary into our lives? Dear Mystic, how can we do this?
well, if you just sit quietly and speak to her, and she will telepathically answer you. But you have to get yourself into that centered place of peace and harmony, then talk, and she will just, and once you start with you, she will keep chattering. So, you know, as long as you keep asking questions, telepathically, all the answers will come in, or you may find yourself like when the beginning, when she wanted me to make a major change, I'd be driving along in my car, and suddenly she would be sitting in the back seat, and then no telepathic then. It was the voice. It is, don't you think it is time? When she wanted me to do divine feminine conferences, I'm driving through Winslow, Arizona one day going to a gallop, and she says, don't you think it is time you did some divine feminine conferences? And then normally I would have some smart thing to say, but this day I said, I will look at it when I get home. And which I did. And the following, you know, then I did them.
So you see, ladies and gentlemen, the way that Finbarr approaches this, that he has unquestionable belief. Nothing disturbs his belief. His belief, faith, and trust are these powerful muscles where it allows him to sit in the simplicity of stillness so that he can receive the divine dispensations from the holy ones. And of course, as you can see, his humor and lightness is just so joyous that he and Mary, either Magdalene or Mother Mary, have these wonderful conversations where she can be quite stern with him, but he doesn't cower or become overawed. He just simply sits with her and has wonderful conversation. Okay, any other questions, ladies and gentlemen? Is Sarah one of Mary Magdalene's children?
I believe she is.
So
And
there's
you can go to the Basilica in St. Mary's de la Mar, and there is St. Sarah.
there is Sarah.
A
Can you
very
do
wonderful place.
you remember the names of the four children of Mary?
Ruth, Sarah, Timothy, and David.
David. So two girls and two boys,
Yes,
and their father being Yeshua.
yes.
Yeah.
They actually, tradition has it that she had one on Iona after the crucifixion.
Sorry,
And she
could
had
you?
two children after the crucifixion and two children before the crucifixion.
Right,
She
right,
was pregnant actually at the time of the crucifixion.
right.
And the baby the David, which was the that baby, he is said that he was brought up at Joseph of Arimathea brought him to um, Glastonbury, and he
Yes.
was brought up at Glastonbury.
Yes, I've heard this as well.
Yes.
And perhaps you could just specify for us who Joseph was. Joseph of Arimathea, that is.
Joseph of Arimathea was Jesus's uncle.
Right. And he was an extraordinary man, wasn't
He
he?
was a merchant,
Yeah,
and he was coming to Cornwall. He was also a Grand Druid as well as being in a scene, and
yeah,
so he was part of the whole Druid belief system at Glastonbury, and he was also on the Grand Council of the Essenes, which was very hidden because he was selling everything, all the things that he was taking on his ships from Cornwall and everywhere else to the Holy Land and selling it to the Romans.
yes,
And
yes,
and then of course you have Pontius Pilate, who was born in Fortingall in Scotland. So there's
yes,
between the UK and the Holy Land, you know there's an amazing connection. You can go up to Fortingall. Is anybody who's ever been to Fortingall, wonderful place,
yes,
the
yes.
oldest yew tree in Europe.
And of course, they're seeing the cross fertilization that you're describing. There's also this wonderful story of Meritaton, who was the eldest daughter of Akhenaten. He trained as a high priestess, and how she, in her wonderful wisdom, but also her spelling, was able to fall in love with the young prince of Tyre and Zidon, and they changed their name. She became, I forget what, and then can you remember the name that she became?
Sophia, not Sophia, Scotia.
Scotia, that's right,
Yeah, Scotia. Yeah,
where we hear Scotus,
Scotland came
in
from. Yeah,
Scotland, and
and she was an amazing person. All the stories are about that she populated Scotland from
yes,
Ireland, and that is where the term Scots Irish came from
yes,
because
yes,
their lineage came from Ireland.
yes, and of course, there's this immense connection between Sarah in Egypt and Tara.
Yes.
These ancient sites, you see, everybody, they hold immense significance. What is the most important thing we should keep in mind for this up and coming time?
Well, over these amazing sites like Tara and the Great Pyramid at Giza and everything, now there are etheric schools and the books are opening. So when you go visit, you're getting a download. If you sit there and they have been, and even um, a way back, the Lucius Trust, what was her name? Um, hmm,
The
Alice Bailey
Yeah,
talks about Ireland being the place where the new consciousness will rise out of. And then there's a guy called Philip Lindsay who's an amazing astrologer. He's from Australia, but he doesn't live. He talks about Ireland being the new place where the new consciousness is floating out of. So you have that heart at Tara
mm,
in the ancient place. And all of the ancient books say because it was never conquered by the Romans or anything, Brits are the only ones who ever conquered it.
mm,
And so it is a clean energy. It is a feminine energy. And it's this energy, this beautiful heart energy is now coming out of Tara, assisted by the Great Pyramid at Giza and
mm.
Lake Titicaca with the illumination, everything, the three folds coming out, love, wisdom, and illumination out of Tara.
So there you are, Laura. There are the three areas. Um, Tara, the Mount of Tara, the Hill of Tara in in Southern Ireland, and the Great Pyramid, and then Lake Titicaca. Somebody very concernedly, somebody called PS, is asking, I hear this month will be full of disaster and mayhem globally. Is this what you believe, or is this what you hear, Finbar?
No, I believe it's a month of revelation.
Oh, beautiful.
Yeah,
It's a year of revelation and
it's a year,
revolution.
but this
It
month
depends
is
on our
very
perspective.
much into energy of revelation. And
Yeah.
it's happening already. All you have to do is look at. I was looking at the Irish newspaper yesterday, and says the WHO says that the present strain is going to be gone by the end of March.
Yep, absolutely,
So
absolutely. The difficulty, of course, is purely to do with the malperception
yes,
of many of our dear ones, many of our brothers and sisters, because of fear. If you can hear what that Finbar was saying earlier, that fear is an illusion, that love is all there is. If you spend tomorrow, living the whole day in the incandescence of your heart, in love with life, I can assure you, you will suddenly see that the world is not full of disaster or mayhem. You'll suddenly start to see the beloved in everybody and everything. Isabel would love to know how she can learn more about Mary Magdalene. Can you quote any references?
Oh, I don't know. I'd have to think about that. I I haven't read any books about Mary Magdalene. All my interaction with Mary Magdalene has been direct, and it's like one time I was having a very difficult time when I started doing the tours, and this was about 2004.
Mm.
And I had three women on my trip that were giving me a really, really hard time. And I said to Mary Magdalene, I can't continue to do this. This is too much. I can't take this kind of abuse. And she said, Finbarr, you are a man leading a goddess tour, and everything that they have against a man, they're going to take out on you. So suck it up, do your job, and move on. And so, which is what I did. And so, but I had to, up to that, I was so devastated when I went up to my room that night. And I
Mm.
got up in the morning with a whole new perspective in life because she had told me,
Yes.
you're in a territory that men don't venture into.
Indeed, I
Yeah,
had I had the same experience when COVID broke out. I was running a sacred retreat in Egypt, honoring the priestess, and we had lots of challenges. And
yeah,
all ladies. There were 22, I think, 23 ladies. It was a huge amount of projection onto me. I became the psychic dustbin, so
yeah,
much so that actually I became very unwell. Do you agree that this is a time for the observer and not to be swept into action? Of course, of why be swept into heated confusion and passion? Rather live in a state of observant love and tolerance. I think that's what we're really saying. I mean,
yeah.
you
Peace and
ladies,
harmony. You find
lady
that? Yeah,
Melinda, please mark, you have two men sitting in front of you. Finbar and myself, who are talking about nothing but love. We
yeah.
haven't talked about the obscurity of confusion or the passion of hatred.
Mm.
Oh, Suzanne says there is a book called Mary Magdalene revealed by Gemma. Gemma? Sorry, can't remember her surname. But there's a really important part. I mean, Finbar and I have been wanting to meet for many, many, many years. And this is an opportunity where we have met. That's why I was so keen to bring him onto Deep Dialogues. And particularly having read your wonderful, wonderful book and reviewing it,
Thank you.
when Susan, we have a mutual friend who's our literary agent who asked me to review it. So I will exchange with Finbar post this dialogue because unfortunately our time has come to a close, and I will make sure that all of the information that may come to the forefront of our consciousness is on my Facebook page. Oh, by Megan Watterston, yes, Mary Magdalene Revealed. Absolutely, thank you, Laura. Um, but what's also very significant, you can hear this through the wonderful mysticism of what Finbar is sharing with us. That much of the information comes to him not through book learning, but actually through direct experience with Mother Mary and with Mary Magdalene. And that's what's so extraordinary within the sacred mysticism of this wonderful Druid Essene man that we have sitting with us. Finbar, it's been an absolute joy having you with us. Thank you so much for being.
Thank you. Thank you so very much. Thank you, everybody. Thank you,
Namaste,
Stuart. It's
namaste.
so beautiful to see you. Thank you.
It's wonderful to be with you. And please stay where you are.
I will.
Unfortunately, ladies and gentlemen, we will have to close down. And bless you all for coming through. And don't forget, here is Finbar's wonderful website. So please make a note of it. I'll put it onto Facebook. And
That's for
don't
the
forget,
that's for the book, and there's an S on the end for the tours,
journeys.
journeys. Yeah,
So it's Sacred Mystical Journeys, ladies and
yeah.
gentlemen. If in doubt, just email me, stuart@stuartpearce.com, or leave a note on my Facebook page. And don't forget, everybody, that next Sunday is the beginning of an amazing retreat where we will be online, but traveling to Egypt. And it's called The Ancient Egyptian Keys to Paradise Bless you, everybody. And thank you, Ryan, very much.